How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, December 27th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place yesterday on Sunday, December 26th, 2021. Taking a step back and looking where we are with 5 days left in the calendar year. First, starting with football, we are still in the midst of the college football bowl season. So at this moment, college football seasons are ending. There were no college bowl games yesterday, but of course there will be the Quick Lane Bowl today, but I'll get into that. The NFL is after this week has about 2 more weeks left as teams are starting to get eliminated and teams are starting to clinch their playoff positions. And not to mention that college and pro basketball are well underway for the next few months. Same with soccer as we are hitting the midway point. With that said, looking first at football, the only game taking place will be the Quick Lane Bowl as unranked Western Michigan faces off against unranked Nevada. Taking a look at what went down with college basketball, there were no ranked matchups yesterday, and there's actually no ranked matchups today as well. But of course, once I have ranked matchups for you, I'll get right back to you. With that said, taking a look at what went down in the NFL yesterday, starting off in Atlanta, the Falcons hosted the Detroit Lions, and my brother was actually at this game. The Falcons would end up beating the Lions 20-16. The score was tied at 10 at the half. The Falcons would end up outscoring the Lions 10-6 in the second half. They would break their 13-13 tie off of a 12-yard touchdown pass from Matt Ryan to Hayden Hurst. And the Lions would kick a field goal, and they just wouldn't bring it closer as the Lions still have yet to pick up a win on the road this season. On the losing end of this matchup, the Lions were led by their starting quarterback, Tim Boyle. Boyle would throw for 187 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Their leading rusher, Jamal Williams, finished with 19 carries for 77 yards on the ground. And then their starting wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, finished with 9 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. The Lions' leading tackler was Jalen Reeves-Maybin. He finished with 8 tackles on the day. On the winning end of this matchup, the Atlanta Falcons were led by their elite starting quarterback, Matt Ryan. Ryan completed 18 of his 24 passes as he threw for 210 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 5 yards. That's 220 total yards of offense. The Falcons' leading receiver was their rookie tight end out of Florida, Kyle Pitts. He finished with 6 receptions for 102 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, the Falcons' leading tackler was Foyesade Olakun. He finished with 14 tackles on the day, and Deion Jones finished with 10. Olakun also had a 6-yard interception return. With this win, the Atlanta Falcons are now 7-8, and with this loss, the Detroit Lions are now 2-12-1 on the season. Taking a look now at what happened in Cincinnati, the Bengals hosted the Baltimore Ravens from within their own division. The Bengals would end up beating the Ravens 41-21. They won this matchup by 20 after they outscored Baltimore 31-14 in the first half and then 10-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Baltimore Ravens were led by their starting quarterback, Josh Johnson. Johnson threw for 304 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He also ran for 10 yards. He had 314 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Mark Andrews, finished with 8 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, James Prochet II, had 7 receptions for 76 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Tony Jefferson II led the team in tackles as he had 10 of them. He also had one of the team's 3 sacks. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals were led by their starting quarterback, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow. Burrow would go on to throw for 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also ran for 11 yards. That's 536 total yards of offense. The Bengals' leading rusher, their Pro Bowl running back Joe Mixon, would finish with 18 carries as he had 65 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And he would also go on to have 70 receiving yards and a touchdown as he combined for 135 total yards of offense and 2 touchdowns. The Bengals' leading receiver, T. Higgins, had 12 receptions for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their rookie wide receiver out of LSU, Jamar Chase, had 7 receptions for 125 yards. Tyler Boyd, their third leading receiver, had 3 receptions for 85 yards as he had a receiving touchdown himself. The Bengals' leading tackler was Marcus Bailey as he had 8 tackles on the day, and Von Bell would log the team's lone interception as he also had 5 tackles for himself. With this win, the Cincinnati Bengals are now 9-6. With this loss, the Baltimore Ravens are now officially 8-7 on the year. Taking a look at what went down in Minneapolis, the Minnesota Vikings hosted the LA Rams in, of course, what is a playoff rivalry matchup as of this day and age. The Rams would end up beating the Vikings 30-23. They would win this matchup after they outscored the Vikings 13-3 in the first half. The Vikings outscored the Rams 20-17 in the second half, but the Rams would virtually keep it out of arm's length for enough time in the game. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown Vikings were led by their starting quarterback Kirk Cousins from a couple states over, Michigan State. Kirk Cousins would throw for 315 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 17 yards. That's 332 total yards of offense. It looks as though Minnesota's leading rusher, Alexander Mattison, had 13 carries for 41 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He also had 29 receiving yards. He would go on to finish with 70 yards of offense with his touchdown. Minnesota's elite wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, would lead the team in yards as he had 8 receptions for 116 yards on the day. On the defensive side of the ball, the Vikings' elite safety, Harrison Smith, as well as Mackenzie Alexander, would finish with 9 tackles leading the team. Anthony Barr out of Loyola High School, my alma mater, would go on to finish with 2 of the team's 3 interceptions, and Xavier Woods had the other one. Anthony Barr would have 7 tackles alongside his 2 picks, and then, of course, Xavier Woods would finish with 8 tackles alongside his interception. On the winning end of this matchup, the LA Rams were led by their starting quarterback, Matt Stafford. Stafford threw for 195 yards, a touchdown, and 3 picks. He also ran for 8 yards. That's 205 total yards of offense. The Rams' leading rusher, Sony Michel, had 27 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown. He also had a 4-yard reception. That's 135 total yards of offense. The Rams' leading receiver, Cooper Kupp, had 10 receptions for 109 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Taylor Rapp finished with 8 tackles. Aaron Donald had 5 for himself as he would go on to finish with one of the team's 3 sacks. And Travin Howard would go on to finish with the team's lone interception as he had 5 tackles for himself. With this win, the Los Angeles Rams are 11-4. With this loss, the Minnesota Vikings are now 7-8 on the season. Now taking a look at what is going down in Boston, the New England Patriots hosted the Buffalo Bills. The Bills would end up beating the Patriots 33-21. They outscored the Pats 17-7 in the first half before outscoring them again 16-14 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Patriots were led by their first-round overall pick from this year, Mac Jones out of Alabama. Jones would throw for 145 yards and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 33 yards. That is 178 total yards of offense. The Pats' leading rusher was Damian Harris as he had 18 carries for 103 yards, and he had all of the 3 Patriots touchdowns on the ground. The Patriots' leading tackler on the defensive end was Miles Bryant, who was in my pre-calculus class all the way back in high school, who went to Washington. Miles Bryant would go on to finish with 9 tackles on the day. Congratulations. On the winning end of this matchup, the Buffalo Bills were led by their elite starting quarterback, Josh Allen, out of Wyoming. Allen would complete 30 of his 47 passes as he threw for 314 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also ran for 64 yards. He finished with 378 total yards of offense for the team. Their second leading rusher, Devin Singletary, had 12 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown, as he also went on to finish with 39 yards through the air. That's 78 total yards of offense. The Bills' leading receiver, Isaiah McKenzie, had 11 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown. Their elite wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, had 7 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, their elite linebacker Tremaine Edmonds finished with 8 tackles on the day, and Micah Hyde would go on to finish with 2 interceptions for himself as he had 22 yards of total returned, as he would finish with 6 tackles on the day alongside his 2 interceptions. With this win, the Buffalo Bills are now 9-6. With this loss, the New England Patriots are also 9-6, as of course they both are sitting in the same division. Taking a look now at what happened in New York, the Jets hosted the Jaguars. The Jets would beat the Jaguars 26-21. The Jets outscored the Jaguars 13-12 in the first half, and then they would go on to outscore the Jags 13-9 in the second half. The Jaguars brought it close, but they never really had a lead, or they had a lead in the second quarter. They didn't have a lead in the second half at all. But taking a quick look at how the Jacksonville Jaguars fared on the losing end, they were led by their elite starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He would go on to complete 26 of his 39 passes as he threw for 280 yards. He would also run for 37 yards. He finished with 317 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Dare Ogunbowale, would finish with 17 carries for 57 yards and a touchdown. He also had 15 yards through the air as he combined for 72 total yards of offense. The Jaguars' leading tackler on the defensive end was Chappelle Russell. He had 8 tackles on the day, and he would lead, like I said, he led the team. And on the winning side of this matchup, the New York Jets would be led by their starting quarterback, the number 2 overall pick from this most recent draft, Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson would go on to throw for 102 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 91 yards and an additional touchdown. He had 193 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Michael Carter, had 16 carries for 118 yards. He would also have 6 receiving yards through the air, so he had 124 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, the Jets' leading tackler was C.J. Mosley out of Alabama. He had 10 tackles, including the team's lone sack. With this win, the New York Jets are now 4-11. With this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now 2-13 on the year. Taking a look now at what took place in Philadelphia, the Eagles hosted the New York Giants from within their division, the NFC East. The Eagles will go on to beat the Giants 34-10. The score was tied at 3 at halftime. The Eagles would outscore the Giants 31-7 in the second half to win this game. On the losing end of this matchup, the New York Giants were led by their starting quarterback, Mike Glennon. He threw for 93 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he also had 11 yards on the ground. He had 104 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Julian Love. He had 7 tackles for himself. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Philadelphia Eagles were led by their starting quarterback out of Alabama and Oklahoma, Jalen Hurts. Hurts finished with 199 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 7 yards on the ground as he had 206 total yards of offense. The Eagles' their elite wide receiver, Devontae Smith, would finish with 5 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, the Philadelphia Eagles were led in tackles by T.J. Edwards. He had 16 of them. And Alex Singleton had 12 tackles on the day. And Singleton would also have a 29-yard pick 6 for himself. Rodney McLeod would finish with the team's other interception. As alongside his interception, he would register a tackle for the Eagles as well. With this win, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 8-7, and with this loss, the New York Giants from within the NFC East are now 4-11 as well. Taking a look now at what is going on in Charlotte, the Carolina Panthers would go on to host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from within their division, the NFC South. The defending Super Bowl champs would beat the Panthers 32-6 after they outscored the Panthers 19-6 in the first half. The Bucs shut the Panthers out 13-0 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Panthers were led by their starting quarterback, Cam Newton. He would throw for 61 yards and an interception, and he ran for 42. That's 103 total yards of offense. Their backup quarterback, Sam Darnold out of USC, would throw for 190 yards as he ran for 11 yards himself. He had 201 total yards of offense. Their leading receiver, Shee Smith, finished with 3 receptions for 86 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Shaq Thompson would finish with 8 tackles on the day. And then on the wing side of this matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were led by their goated starting quarterback out of Michigan, 7-time Super Bowl champ Tom Brady would end up completing 18 of his 30 passes as he threw for 232 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 11 yards. That's 243 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Keyshawn Vaughn, had 7 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading rusher, Ronald Jones II, had 20 carries for 65 yards as he had a touchdown for himself. He also had 2 receptions for 16 yards. That's 81 total yards of offense. The Buccaneers' leading wide receiver was former first-team All-Pro wide receiver Antonio Brown. Brown would finish with 10 receptions for 101 yards. Their second leading receiver, Cyril Grayson, would finish with 3 receptions for 81 yards as well as a 14-yard carry. He had 95 yards from scrimmage. On the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Whitehead and Mike Edwards led the team in tackles as they each had 7 of them. William Golston would finish with 3 tackles as he had 2.5 sacks. The team would combine for 7 sacks on the day. In addition to his team-high 7 tackles, Jordan Whitehead would have the team's lone interception. With this win, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 11-4, and with this loss, the Carolina Panthers from within the same division are now officially 5-10. Taking a look at what went down in Houston, the Houston Texans hosted the Los Angeles Chargers. The Texans would beat the Chargers 41-29. They outscored the Chargers 17-12 in the first half, and then they outscored them again 24-17 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Los Angeles Chargers were led by their elite second-year quarterback out of Oregon, Justin Herbert. Last year's NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year would complete 27 of his 35 passes as he threw for 336 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. He had 15 yards on the ground as he would finish with 351 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Justin Jackson, had 11 carries for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also had 8 receptions for 98 yards. He finished with 162 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler, Kazir White, would finish with 11 tackles for himself. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Houston Texans were led by their starting quarterback, Davis Mills. He threw for 254 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, their leading rusher, Rex Burkhead, would finish with 22 carries for 149 yards and 2 touchdowns. And also, their leading receiver, Chris Conley, finished with 3 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Neville Hewitt finished with 11 tackles as he led the team on with them. Desmond King II had 10 tackles for himself. And then the team's 2 interceptions went to Jonathan Owens and Tavier Thomas. Tavier Thomas would go 48 yards to the house as he also had 8 tackles alongside his interception or his pick 6. With this win, the Houston Texans out of the AFC South are now 4-11. And with this loss, the Los Angeles Chargers out of the AFC West are now 8-7 at this point in the season. Taking a look now at what is going on in Seattle, the Seahawks hosted the Chicago Bears. The Bears would beat the Seahawks by 1. They won this matchup 25-24. The Seahawks outscored the Bears 17-7 in the first half. The Bears would outscore the Seahawks 18-7 in the second half. The Seahawks were up 24-14 going into the fourth quarter. The Bears would shorten their deficit with a field goal, but then it would be a 15-yard touchdown pass from Nick Foles to Jimmy Graham to put them in position, and then it would be Damiere Byrd scoring on the 2-point conversion on that play with 1 minute left to give the Bears the win rather than just a chance in overtime. On the losing end of this matchup, the Seattle Seahawks were led by their elite starting quarterback out of Wisconsin, Russell Wilson. He would complete 16 of his 27 passes as he threw for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 13 yards. He had 194 total yards of offense. The Seahawks leading rusher was Rashad Penny. He had 17 carries for 135 yards and a touchdown. Their leading receiver was Gerald Everett. He had 4 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. Their elite wide receiver out of Ole Miss, DK Metcalf, had 2 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, their elite linebacker, Bobby Wagner, finished with 12 tackles on the day. Jordan Brooks had 10 of his own. Carlos Dunlap II would finish with 5 tackles as he had 2 sacks. Rasheem Green had 2 tackles as he had 2 sacks for himself. And on the winning end of this matchup, the Chicago Bears were led by their starting quarterback, the Eagles starting quarterback when they won their most recent Super Bowl, Nick Foles. Nick Foles would throw for 250 yards and a touchdown as he also ran for 8 yards. He had 258 total yards of offense. The Bears' leading rusher was also their leading receiver. David Montgomery would finish with 21 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He had 7 receptions for 61 yards through the air. He would combine for 106 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, the Bears were led in tackles by Roquan Roquan Smith. Smith would finish with 9 tackles on the day. And then with this win, the Chicago Bears out of the NFC North are now 5-10. With this loss, the Seattle Seahawks out of the NFC West are now 5-10 as well. Taking a look at what went down in Kansas City, the Chiefs hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they were able to pull off a 36-10 win at home. The reigning AFC champs shut the Steelers out 23-0 in the first half, and then they outscored the Steelers 13-10 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Steelers were led by their elite starting quarterback out of Miami, Ohio, Ben Roethlisberger. He would go on to he would complete 23 of his 35 passes as he threw for 159 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The Steelers' leading rusher, Najee Harris out of Alabama, had 19 carries for 93 yards on the ground. He had 17 yards through the air. That's 110 total yards of offense. The Steelers' leading receiver, Deontay Johnson, had 6 receptions for 51 yards as he had the team's lone receiving touchdown. Robert Spillane would lead the Steelers in tackles as he had 13 of them. Their elite safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, would finish with 12, and their linebacker, Joe Sherbert, finished with 10. The Steelers' elite defensive tackle, Cameron Hayward, finished with 6 tackles as he had a sack for himself. On the winning end of this matchup, the Kansas City Chiefs were led by their elite starting quarterback out of Texas Tech, Pat Mahomes. He would complete 23 of his 30 passes as he threw for 258 yards and 3 touchdowns. Their leading rusher, Darrell Williams, would finish with 11 carries for 55 yards on the ground as he had 30 yards through the air. He had 85 total yards of offense. The Chiefs' leading receiver, Byron Pringle, had 6 receptions for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the defensive end of this matchup, DiCaprio Bootle finished and Ben Neiman each finished with 8 tackles each. Also taking a look at what went through in this team, their elite safety, Tyrann Mathieu, would finish with 2 tackles as he recovered a fumble. Charvarius Ward would finish with the team's lone interception as he had 3 tackles for himself. With this win, the Kansas City Chiefs are now 11-4, and with this loss, the Pittsburgh Steelers are now 7-1. Taking a look now at what transpired in Las Vegas. The Raiders hosted the Denver Broncos within their own division, and the Raiders would beat the Broncos 17-13. The Broncos outscored the Raiders 13-7 in the first half. The Raiders would shut the Broncos out in the second half, outscoring them 7-10. They would take the lead in the third quarter off of a 5-yard touchdown run from Peyton Barber. On the losing end of this matchup, the Denver Broncos were led by their starting quarterback out of Missouri, Drew Lock. Drew Lock threw for 153 yards and he ran for 10. That's 163 total yards of offense. Their leading tackler was Jonas Griffith. He had 13 on the day. Shelby Harris would finish with 5 tackles as he had a sack and a half. Bradley Chubb would finish with an interception as he had 5 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Las Vegas Raiders were led by their starting quarterback, Derek Carr. He would throw for 201 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He would also run for 5 yards. He had 206 total yards of offense. The Raiders' elite starting running back, Josh Jacobs, had 27 carries for 129 yards. On the defensive side of this matchup, their leading tackler was Desmond Trufant. He finished with 7 on the day. And then their newest Pro Bowler, Max Crosby, would finish with 3 tackles as he had a sack for himself. With this win, the Las Vegas Raiders are now 8-7. With this loss, the Denver Broncos are now 7-8. Last but not least, looking at the final matchup from yesterday, this one took place in Dallas as the Dallas Cowboys hosted the Washington football team from within their own division. The Cowboys would end up beating the Washington football team 56-14. They would go on to win this matchup. They outscored Washington 42-7 in the first half before outscoring them 14-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Washington football team was led by their starting quarterback, Taylor Heineke. He would throw for 121 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. The Washington football team's leading tacklers on the defensive end were Bobby McCain and Jeremy Reeves. They would each finish with 10 tackles on the day. On the winning end of this matchup, the Dallas Cowboys were led by their starting quarterback out of Mississippi State, Dak Prescott. Prescott would throw for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns on the day. He also ran for 21. That's 351 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Ezekiel Elliott, their elite running back out of Ohio State, finished with 9 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown. He also had 5 yards and a touchdown through the air. That's 42 total yards of offense and 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys' leading receiver, their elite wide receiver, Amari Cooper out of Alabama, finished with 7 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. Malik Turner finished with 3 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz finished with 8 receptions for 82 yards as he had a touchdown himself. On the defensive side of this matchup, Damontae Kazee and Keanu Neal led the Cowboys in tackles as they each had 5 of them. And in their secondary, Trayvon Diggs would log yet another interception as the NFL's lead at the moment. And DeMarcus Lawrence would finish with a 40-yard pick six as he had 2 tackles and a sack as well for the game. With this win, the Dallas Cowboys are now 11-4. With this loss, the Washington football team is now 6-9. Looking at what's going on today, the very final matchup of Week 16 will be played in the Superdome in New Orleans as the New Orleans Saints will host the Miami Dolphins. Taking a look at what went down in the NBA yesterday, starting off in Miami, the Heat hosted the Orlando Magic. The Miami Heat would beat the Orlando Magic 93-83 after they won this matchup by 10 after they outscored the Magic by 14 in the middle 2 quarters. On the losing end of this matchup, the Orlando Magic were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Gary Harris. Harris finished with 20 points in 35 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he made all 4 of his free throws on the night. On the winning end of this matchup, the Miami Heat were led in scoring by their elite starting small forward out of Marquette, Jimmy Butler, and their small forward off the bench, Caleb Martin. Jimmy Butler would go on to finish with 17 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals in 35 minutes. He shot 5 for 14 from the field and 7 for 9 from the foul line. Martin finished with 17 points and 5 rebounds in 29 minutes. He shot 7 for 11 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3 as well. And with this win, the Miami Heat are now 21-13. With this loss, the Orlando Magic are now 7-27. Taking a look at what went down in Cleveland, the Cavaliers hosted the Toronto Raptors. The Cavs would beat the Raptors 144-99. The Cavs won this game by 45 after they outscored the Raptors by 16 in the second quarter and by 23 in the third. On the losing end of this matchup, the Toronto Raptors were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Yuta Watanabe. Watanabe would finish with 26 points and 13 rebounds, as well as 5 turnovers in 37 minutes. He shot 11 for 20 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he shot 2 for 3 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Chris Boucher, finished with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 turnovers in 28 minutes. He shot 6 for 19 from the field and 7 for 9 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers were led in scoring by their starting power forward and their one of their remaining members from their most recent championship appearance, Kevin Love, and also Darius Garland, their point guard out of Vanderbilt. Love finished with 22 points and 9 rebounds in 18 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 6 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Darius Garland, finished with 22 points and 8 assists, as well as 2 steals in 29 minutes. He shot 9 for 17 from the field, and he would make his only free throw attempt on the night. Their starting power forward out of Arizona, Lauri Markkanen, would finish with 20 points and 7 rebounds in 22 minutes. He shot 9 for 13 from the field and made his only free throw attempt of the night. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 20-13. With this loss, the Toronto Raptors are now 14-16. Jumping out to our nation's capital, the Washington Wizards hosted the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers would beat the Wizards 117-96. The Sixers won this matchup by 21. They outscored the Wizards by 14 in the second quarter and by 12 in the third, by a combined 26 in the middle 2 quarters. On the losing end of this matchup, the Washington Wizards were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Spencer Dinwiddie. Dinwiddie would finish with 17 points and 6 assists in 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 13 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3 as well. On the winning end of this matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers were led by their elite starting center out of Kansas, Joel Embiid. Embiid finished with 36 points, 13 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 31 minutes. He shot 12 for 17 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he shot 10 for 11 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Tobias Harris, finished with 23 points and 7 rebounds in 30 minutes. He shot 10 for 16 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Philadelphia 76ers are now 17-16. With this loss, the Washington Wizards are also 17-16 on their season. Jumping out to Sacramento, the Kings hosted the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies would end up beating the Kings 127-102. The Grizzlies won this matchup by 25 after they outscored the Kings by 26 in the second half, by 13 in the third and fourth quarters each. On the losing end of this matchup, the Sacramento Kings were led in scoring by their starting point guard out of Iowa State, Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton finished with 18 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 steals in 32 minutes. He shot 5 for 12 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he made all 6 of his free throw attempts on the night. On the winning end of this matchup, the Memphis Grizzlies were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Desmond Bane. Bane finished with 28 points and 2 steals in 32 minutes. He shot 11 for 19 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Jaren Jackson Jr., finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 26 minutes. He shot 5 for 18 from the field and 10 for 13 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, John Morant, finished with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists in 30 minutes. He shot 8 for 18 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 20-14. With this loss, the Sacramento Kings are now 13-21 on the season, just to get a sense of where they are. Jumping out to Oklahoma City, the OKC Thunder hosted the New Orleans Pelicans. The Thunder would end up beating the Pelicans 117-112. The Thunder would win this matchup by 5 after they outscored the Pels by 14 in the first quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the New Orleans Pelicans were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Villanova, former college basketball champ Josh Hart. He finished with 29 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 steals in 38 minutes as he shot 10 for 17 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their small forward off the bench, Garrett Temple, finished with 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot 9 for 17 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Oklahoma City Thunder were led by their starting point guard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He finished with 31 points and 5 assists, as well as 3 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot 11 for 20 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and 8 for 13 from the foul line. Their starting shooting guard in this matchup, Aaron Wiggins, would finish with 24 points of his own, as the second-round pick out of Maryland would finish with 6 rebounds alongside his 24 points. He would shoot in his 32 minutes, he shot 8 for 10 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 12-20. With this loss, the New Orleans Pelicans are now 12-22 on the season. Jumping out to San Antonio, the Spurs hosted the Detroit Pistons. The Spurs would be another team that scored 144 points. They beat the Pistons 144-109. They won this matchup by 35 after they outscored the Pistons by 24 points in the first half, and they also outscored the Pistons by 15 in the third. On the losing end of this matchup, the Detroit Pistons were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Hamidou Diallo, out of Kansas. He finished with 28 points and 3 steals in 39 minutes. He shot 13 for 19 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3 as well. Their starting small forward, Saddiq Bey, finished with 23 points and 8 rebounds in 41 minutes. He shot 5 for 16 from the field and 12 for 14 from the foul line. And their starting center, Luke Garza, the University of Iowa legend, their all-time leading scorer, would finish with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 fouls in 20 minutes. He shot 7 for 14 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Spurs were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Keldon Johnson, out of Kentucky. He finished with 27 points and 5 rebounds in 23 minutes. Johnson shot 10 for 12 from the field, a perfect 4 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the San Antonio Spurs are now 14-18. With this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 5-27. Taking a look at what went down in Chicago, the Bulls hosted the Indiana Pacers. The Bulls would beat the Pacers 113-105. They won this matchup by 5 after they outscored the Pacers by 15 in the first half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Pacers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Caris LeVert. He finished with 27 points and 9 assists in 39 minutes. He shot 9 for 22 from the field and 6 for 7 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Chicago Bulls were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine would finish with 32 points and 5 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 12 for 18 from the field, 5 for 9 from 3, and 3 for 5 from the foul line. Their starting small forward on the other wing, DeMar DeRozan out of USC, would finish with 24 points and 2 steals in 36 minutes as he shot 9 for 20 from the field. He made his only 3-pointer on the day, and he went 5 for 7 from the foul line. With this win, the Chicago Bulls are now 20-10, and with this loss, the Indiana Pacers are now 14-20. Last but not least, heading to the Crypto.com arena, the LA Clippers hosted the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets would beat the Clippers 103-100. They won this matchup by 3 after they outscored the Clippers by 7 in the last quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the hometown LA Clippers were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Eric Bledsoe, and their shooting guard off the bench, Brandon Boston Jr. Bledsoe finished with 18 points, 10 assists, and 5 steals, as well as 2 blocks in 37 minutes. He shot 8 for 17 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. Boston finished with 18 points in 33 minutes as he shot 6 for 15 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Denver Nuggets were led in scoring by their elite starting center, the reigning NBA MVP, Nikola Jokic. He finished with 26 points, 22 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in 38 minutes as he shot 9 for 24 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and he made all 7 of his free throw attempts. With this win, the Denver Nuggets are now 16-16. With this loss, the LA Clippers are now 17-16 on the year. That is, of course, how the NBA is shaping up as we, of course, are getting to today's matchups. Once today's matchups are done, I'll come back tomorrow. And then taking a quick look at what went on overseas with soccer, looking at the Premier League, Manchester City hosted Leicester City and was able to win this matchup 6-3. They got their first goal came from their elite Belgian midfielder, Kevin De Bruyne. Their second goal coming from their Algerian forward, Riyad Mahrez, on a penalty. Their third coming from Ilkay Gundogan. Their fourth and sixth coming from their elite English forward, Raheem Sterling, and Anthony Laporte, their defender, would score their 5th of 6. So that was a big win for Man City. Taking a look at Arsenal, they were able to beat Norwich City 5-0 as 2 of their goals came from their young British forward, Bukayo Saka. Tottenham hosted Crystal Palace and pulled off a 3-0 win at home. Their first goal came in the 32nd minute from their elite English striker, Harry Kane, and their third goal came in the 74th minute from their elite Korean forward, Son Heung-min. Chelsea was able to beat Aston Villa 3-1 with 2 of their goals coming off of penalty kicks from their Italian midfielder, Jorginho, and they were able to and their second goal came from their elite Belgian striker, Romelu Lukaku. Taking a look at outside of that, there were really no other big matchups. But of course, as we navigate through this world of sports one day at a time, we will of course cover all of them. I of course want to thank the ESPN, the FIFA, the NCAA, the NFL, and the NBA websites for giving me all the stats and figures that I needed in order to do this episode, because I would not be able to do it without them. At the same time, I, of course, want to thank everyone for listening to all 39 minutes of my piece. I hope all is well. Once everything's done today, I'll come back with another piece tomorrow. I can't wait. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.